It's a little bit after 8:30, and it is Thursday, November the 7th, 2019. And welcome to week number 6 of Contemporary Issues of Criminal Justice. And as you know, I'm Professor Richard Wright, and we've been together for 6 weeks now. We have reached almost the halfway point, and I want you to know that any assignments that were due for weeks 1 through 5 at the end of this week, I will not be accepting them unless we had made previous arrangements. So be aware that this is your opportunity to get the assignments done. And so I'm going to spend, the next maybe half an hour or so going over the requirements for this week's assignment, and then be aware of the fact that the next lecture will take place week 8 as well. So let's get right into sharing my screen. And here we are. And you are familiar with all of this information here. And you can see here that your lecture, first one was week 1, then week 3, this is week 6, and then we have 2 more, weeks 8 and week 10. Okay, so I'm going to go right over to our announcement for this week. Interviewing with justice in the justice studies field. This is an important thing. As I said to you at the beginning of this course, that this is like a survey course. This is a prep course to help you to get ready for your exit or either continuation into the bachelor program. But what we're doing is we're preparing you so that you are able to take the material and information that you've learned in this program to be able to successfully land your first job, or either to be advanced in the job. You're aware of the fact that there is no textbook. It's like an independent studies, as I said, and I'm here to help you and guide you. And I tell you to pay close attention to the course calendar. It's very important in terms of providing details and information. And then make sure that you participate in the discussion assignment, answering interview questions. Of course, your initial post was due on Tuesday, and your reply post is due this Saturday. And finally, complete the written assignment, interviewing in criminal and justice studies, which I'll go over in just a few minutes, the requirements for that. All right, so now let's take a look at the course calendar. Okay, the course calendar tells you where we are today, November 7th, and it tells you what I said earlier. Initial posts were due on Tuesday, and your reply post this Saturday, and your written assignment is due Sunday. And then you have a key phrase that, or word that you have to give in order to get your points for this week. And then the next week, you go over the assignments that are for weeks 7, and then I'll see you back again for week 8 on Thursday. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me as far as that's concerned. And be aware that we have reached the point where the course ends December 13th, that Friday, and all assignments have to be in, of course, by that time. All right, so we have other things that I won't go into right now. So let's go and let's take a look at week 6. So let's take a quick look at the assignments. So here's your written assignment. A 1 to 2 page paper, write 8 potential interview questions and your rather elaborate responses. Did you hear me? Rather elaborate responses. Be sure to include why you believe each answer is appropriate and your questions should be geared toward the dream job that you've been researching throughout this course, such as the one that you're doing your field report on from week 1. You're familiar with the 10-hour requirement there. So this should be some interview questions if you were interviewing for that. Make sure you double space them, and again, citations in the body, which means, so how do you do this if you're providing that? Well, you're going to get your questions from somewhere, and you're going to have some information about the area that you're talking about. Just make sure you provide citations in the body and references at the end. Here is the rubric. The rubric right here tells you, identify the position and explain 8 possible interview questions. Do it in paragraph form. Meet the 1 to 2 page minimum requirement, double space, and make sure you have APA, title page and reference page, and then in-text citations as well. And you know how to go from there. Many of you lose points because you don't follow that part. So you've got to make sure that you understand that requirement. All right? And then your discussion post, and then your live post lecture that I'm going to give you. So now let's go into talking about, from the lesson content, what the objectives are. Again, you see the assignments. So I'm going to talk about these bullet points for the next 10, 15 minutes or so. So you should understand that interviewing in criminal justice is kind of unique. It's very interesting because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be interviewing for opportunities to be a first responder, police, fire, paramedic, or you're going to end up finding yourself in a situation where you're going to be operating as a corrections officer, jailer, or you're going to end up being a parole officer or probation officer, or you're going to end up being a psychologist in terms of criminal justice. Some of you might go into forensics, the scientific aspects of it. And so what you have to be aware of is that in interviewing criminal justice fields, you have to first of all be able to apply some of the experiences that you gain and conduct some serious research. For example, checking out the agency, looking at their websites, learning what those individuals do on a daily basis. You might even consider talking to someone that you know, a family member or a friend who is in that area. Recognizing the reason why there are certain questions that you would put in there to basically determine your character, your ethics, your professionalism in the process of criminal justice. You should be aware, as a criminal justice individual, having been a student in this program, that you have learned some legal aspects of it. You've learned what the roles are and what the duties are in those roles, and you have been exposed to materials in the past from written information that helps you to understand how a person becomes a law enforcement, how they become probation, parole, corrections, what the requirements are for each of these things. So it is very unique in terms of interviewing. In other words, it's not the same as interviewing as a teacher or interviewing for an accountant position or a business position. No, there's a lot of issues that involve your integrity. Of course, that again goes with all jobs. But recognize and understand the need for you to apply those transferable skills that we've talked to you about, of being able to communicate well with people of various backgrounds, the diverse aspects of your job, that you're going to deal with people from all walks of life, people who are different from you, whose culture is different from you, who worship different from you, or don't worship at all. You're gonna deal with people from the standpoint that you are to be the professional, even when they are not unprofessional. Such as if you're in law enforcement, you can't be cussing people out. You can't be calling people out of their names. You can't be degrading. Respect is required. I don't care if they are a suspect. I don't care if they're a cop killer. You have to still operate on a professional basis. So otherwise, what you do is you jeopardize the opportunity for the system to work as it's designed. And it's designed that if a person is wrong in terms of doing something, then they should serve and receive punishment for it. If a person is not guilty of something, then they should be exonerated as well. And so common interview questions that are asked in justice studies are questions like hypotheticals. If you were in a certain scenario, how would you respond and why? Those are one of the key questions that they'll ask. They'll also ask you, could you share with us what you know about the particular position or organization that you are seeking to get employed with. So you'll be discussing information that you have derived from your research about the agency and those kinds of things. And then also, it helps you to have, as we tell people, participate as interns in your community to get to know those individuals. But volunteer work is, and you'll hear us talking about that, is a way to get your foot in the door, because of the fact that there are other people who are applying for positions, and what you want to do is carve out what I call your niche. Keep the people the people thinking about who you are as they're interviewing you. Present a perspective that they remember your name. In the interview, when I applied for the state program coordinator, I was asked the question, what makes you the most qualified individual for the position? And I gave the answer to that, but I was prepared for that. I sat down and I wrote out my questions and possible answers, and thinking what possible things would they ask me. And so it came to the point that when I was actually doing the interview, I had already done my due diligence research about the organization, about the job description, about and also apply what I've learned in my professional life prior to that, as well as what I learned in my educational career as well. And so you're going to have your questions are going to fit among those areas, so that you will be able to put something on the mind of that person, so that you would stand out among other individuals. I can tell you that when I completed the interview with the dean of the School of Justice Studies, after I finished the interview, he basically said to me, "I like everything that you said, and you don't exaggerate things. You don't try to butter up somebody, and absolutely don't present falsehoods, But here's my point: is that after I finished that interview, at the end, he said to me, "I have to interview other people, but I like everything that you said. I think I found who I want, but I have to still go through the process itself." So what he let me know was, in that interview, I answered his questions succinct, to the point, and in an interesting fashion that made him have a lasting impression of a positive nature. So as he was going through, he had the level that he wanted to reach, and the rest of the candidates would have to go over that bar. Didn't happen, and I ended up waiting 2 or 3 months, and I got the position. But that's the way you have to approach these interviews, especially in criminal justice. And then the final thing is prepare your interview questions and possible answers related to your field. I said that earlier. I sat down and I thought about what questions would I ask someone if I was interviewing them for that. I did research online. I saw some possible questions from some sources that were really good sources. And I also talked to people who worked as, if I was looking for a position as a police officer. Now, when I was applying for that Justice Studies program position, what I did was I not only wrote out those questions and possible answers, but I also came up with a plan that I could see what the goals and the mission of the school was within the context of the criminal justice program or the School of Justice Studies, and I came up with a strategic plan. And when I did my interview, I discussed those issues, and then I told the person I was interviewing I was going to send them a document that was about 5 or 6 pages long, outlining some possible plans that I had. That made me totally stand out in terms of that, because nobody else thought of doing those kinds of things. And so I tell you, the key thing is to stand out and to be able to put yourself in a position where you have an opportunity to sell yourself. But remember, don't oversell yourself. And again, make sure that when you're doing this, you're doing it with credible information. And so I really don't have much more to share with you because the key thing and topic for this week is dealing with your employment opportunities and what you have to do to prepare. But what I do want to do is take a little bit of time. Since we don't have a lecture for week 7, I want to talk a little bit about your assignments for week 7. So here's I want to tell you right now, and this happens every quarter. Module 7 says you're going to do a written assignment demonstrating good versus poor communication. It asks you to develop a short video. Now, many students have had trouble doing that and are going to tell me I can't do it, I don't have the ability. Well, it's okay. And so here's what I tell you. It says, first of all, you're going to do a 1-page summarizing the contents of the video, and be sure to include your explanation of how you demonstrate good versus poor communication and how each plays an important role in the interview process, which you will have just dealt with in week 6. So now I tell you this. This is where students don't pay attention. It says in here, if you are not able to create your own video, notify your faculty member as soon as possible. As an alternate video source, you can share a link to an online video that demonstrates good versus poor communication. Then you can complete an explanation of analyzing that particular video. I'm giving you permission now, so you can use the alternate source. You don't have to say, hey, I can't do a video, can I do an alternate source? The answer is yes, you can. But make sure you cite in the body the source of that video, as well as have a references at the end. And it's going to be a short thing. You know, give a 1-page summary, and then where you describe that video. And then that's the same thing when you go and you look at the rubric. And the rubric says the same exact thing. All right. So I give you the opportunity to be able to do that right now. So I'm giving you permission. You don't have to reach out to me and say, hey, can I do it? The answer is yes, you can. And then your discussion posts, which are due on Tuesday night, and then your reply posts on Saturdays. And so the lesson content for that is to learn how to apply professional skills, deal with some barriers to effective communication. That's why you got good versus poor in your assignment, and provide methods how you overcome those barriers to become. What's happening here? You're dealing with one of the transferable skills, and that's communication, which is critical. And then here's some information here that is excellent. And I'm not going to go through and deal with it, but you're going to look at this and think about this in terms of to get a position, skills and things like that, and places where you could find the information for completing the assignment, as well as helping you to matriculate as a professional in those fields, whether it's law enforcement, a victim advocate officer, corrections officer, and all those kinds of things. And about the importance of ethical communication and gaining the trust of individuals if you're going to operate in criminal justice. Very, 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 very important. And they talk about how your style of communication exists in terms of dealing with individuals, whether it's suspects, victims, witnesses, or bystanders, and doing that. And then they conclude by talking about interviews. Employers want to know if a potential employee has skills to become effective and proficient communicators. So we're back to, again, to one of our essential skills. And so we're talking about not just oral communication, but we're also talking about written communication, proper grammar, proper spelling, and giving credit for sources and things like that. And then how social media fits into the picture. People say social media is not so good. Social media is like any other tool. If you use it properly, beneficial as well. So it says at the last sentence here, employers will often pre-screen candidates by viewing what their social media is. So you have to be careful who you have as your friends on Facebook. I do that quite frequently. If I see somebody with some trashy stuff, I block them. And any activity that does not fit with an agency's code of conduct or is considered distasteful could prevent you from getting a job. Employers look at social media to see how you are and what your posts and what others that you allow. So, and finally it says employers are seeking candidates that use social media responsibly in an effort to avoid lawsuits or public embarrassment, because they don't want you to come. Remember, they want professionalism because of the fact that we are in a very, 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 very litigious society, and lawsuits seem to happen all too often and too frequently. So you don't want to find yourself in that scenario, because you won't get a job. So, and that's it. So that's all I'm going to have to say for today. I'm going to give you an opportunity by giving you a key phrase, and that's criminal justice interview. Criminal justice interview. So you give me that in order to get your points. I'll see you in about a couple of weeks with our next lecture. That'll be our next to our last lecture during week 8. So I'm going to go back into the classroom, stop sharing, and I'm going to say good night to you.